As last we left, we were talking about the gossip theory and talking about how gossip is possibly the reason that we started to learn more language, and language allows us to communicate with people that we've never seen before. And so, for example, these three boxes, that's where we ended talking about how sapiens can interact with people. But really the question becomes, how many people can we interact with? If we talk about the apes and talk about how it works with them, talk about chimpanzees. We have a lot of studies about chimpanzees. Jane Goodall did a ton of stuff in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s about the great apes. And we know quite a bit about how they work. And so in the Chimpanzee Society, they form coalitions. Guys, or females and males, get together and they form these bands. And how do they stick together? Well, they're very physical with one another. They hug, they kiss, they preen, they pick the ticks out of each other's hair. They do all that. You think about, how does that work for humans? Do we kiss babies? Do we hug? Well, yeah, look here. We've got the past three presidents, and we've got Bush holding up a kid who's, well, this is funny. And you got President Obama kissing the kid, and you got President Trump kissing the kid. And I mean, why are they doing that? Those aren't their kids. Why would you just pick up a random? Well, I'm sure the mom was like, "Here, kiss my baby," and they kiss the baby on the forehead. Why? What's the point? Is to show. Okay, I'm going to answer that. Is to show that we're all humans. We all. It's not about love. It's establishing tribes. We're establishing the tribe of Homo sapiens. So, how big is our tribe? So the scientist, he says, his name is Dunbar, and he came up with this magic number. He was looking at great apes and chimpanzees, etc., and then humans, and talking about what is our number of our tribe? Like, how many people do we actually know? Like an average person, how many people do we know? Like, that we know. So he came up with that number after lots of studying, and that number is 150. So we call that the Dunbar number. And that's the average. So some people, their Dunbar number is a little higher, and some it's a little lower, but the average is 150 people that you know. Dr. Jones, I know a lot more than 150 people. Right, yeah, I understand that. But you don't know them at a deeper level than just, hey, I know what your name is. But Dunbar says you can effectively gossip about 150 people. All right, so the maximum natural size of a group bonded by gossip is about 150, and if you go above that, it becomes difficult to keep all the relationships in your head. A different chart shows that we have different relationships with different people, obviously. And so at the center of the circle, you have the egos. That would be you, all by yourself. So you have a unique relationship with yourself. And then this chart says that there are and again, this is just average, there are about 5 people in your life, again, average, that you have a unique relationship with. So it's your mom, your grandma, your wife, your brother. Okay, so it's your immediate people it's your immediate family in general. Those 5 people. Then we have another group around that. There's a group of 15. And so these people you know quite a bit about. The group of 15. So these would be the rest of your family members, maybe some cousins you hang out with a lot. Maybe these are some of your best friends that you hang out with. They're in your. There's the 2 of you in the oboe section, so you know each other really well because nobody else hangs out with oboe players. So are there 2 oboe? I don't even know how many oboe players we have. So that group of 15. Then we expand that, and you have the next group, which is about the size of 50 people, including the 15 and the 5 inside that. So the 50 people. And these are the people that you know a lot about them. You know about their relationships, you could probably name a lot of what their parents do for a living. For example, here at our school, these would be the people in the band. if you're in the band. These would be the people on the football team if you're on the football team. These would be the AP kids that you know a lot about if you've been in AP for a while. So those would be that group of 50. You know a lot about those individuals. And then we expand it to 150. This is the Dunbar radius. And so at 150, you know 150, again, on average, you know about 150 people's names, you know what they do, you know stuff about them, you know who they're going out with, you know how old they are, maybe, you know who they're related to, right. So about 150 people. And you're sitting here thinking, well, now that I think about that, that's a lot of people. But is it? You start adding up all of your family, like all of your family, like all of them, and then all of your friends, and then those people that you are in class with, and then your teachers, the people you go to work with. You get to 150 pretty fast. The Dunbar number, 150. How do we apply that here at our school? We have about 450 students in this building. So 450, a little more than that, sophomore, junior, seniors. Hey, guess how many principals we have? Oh, we have 3. Look at that. 450 divided by 3 is 150. Do we do that on purpose? Yeah. That's so that each principal can get to know very well about 150 kids, and then when they graduate out, then they go back down to the bottom and they pick the next group up, and that's the game plan. We try to keep it within a Dunbar limit. We try. That doesn't always happen. You know, teachers. We used to have a rule that says teachers could only have about 150 students. It was 160. No, I'm sorry, it was 140. 140 students. According to the law, we could only have that many in our classes total. Then the state of Oklahoma decided, but we're going to move on from there. The state of Oklahoma now says we don't care how many students you have. But if you say the average teacher here on any given year has about 150 students, which is about right. I just looked it up. I currently, right now, have 159 students in all my classes. So the Dunbar number would suggest that I know all of my students' names and I know something about them if I have about 150 students. Well, is that accurate? Because I also have my parents and my brother and sister and their sibling, I am their sibling, and their husbands and wives, and the nieces and nephews and cousins, and then all of my friends and all the teachers in this building. So now I'm at 250. Does that mean that I know all of my students and I know all the relationships? Well, the average is 150, right? So there are some people who have more than 150, and I would probably argue that teachers, their Dunbar numbers are a little higher simply because we have so many people that we interact with all the time. But 250? Well, that seems extreme. So what does this mean? This means that when you see me at Walmart in 10 years from now, and you're like, hey, it's Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones, remember me from 10 years ago? I'm probably going to go, no, I don't remember you. And it's not my fault. It's Dunbar's fault. I can only keep 150 people in my head and the relationships, etc., etc. Now, that's not to say that I won't remember you. Because, you know, for example, if you're a senior this year and you were in band all the time, and I interact with band people, and you were in my plays or my musicals, and you were in my AP class, well, the odds are you're going to be one of my Dunbar kids. I'm going to remember you for a while. I still remember students from my very first year of teaching 6th grade back in, 22 years ago. I still remember. In fact, one of them just emailed me the other day, like literally, it was weird. She emailed me. She goes, by the way, I'm a judge up in Michigan. I'm like, whoa, you're one of my Dunbar kids, and I totally remember you. In fact, your mom's name is Ronnie, and she was divorced from your dad, and she worked here, and then you did this. And I was like, wow, I still remember that from 22 years ago. Right, because she was she's a Dunbar kid for me. In 10 years, I hope I remember you. But don't be, now that's also to say, I hope you remember me, right? But if I'm not one of your Dunbar people, it's okay. It's okay. You always think, oh yeah, that one guy, yeah. Hey, the military even takes that out further, right? They have a group of 150, then there's that next group of about 500 people, and then beyond that, 1,500 people. At 500 people, you might be able to name names or barely recall names. At 1,500, that would be extremely difficult. So that's why the military, they break you up into small groups and then bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Hey, I just lost my light, but that's okay. I can do this in the dark. So what's the secret to expanding our Dunbar number? Well, I mean, if everybody's only limited to 150 people, then how can we interact with people beyond our 150? Well, social scientists say it's very simple. You tell stories. Wow, that's so simple. I just said it. You just tell stories. The secret to expanding the number beyond 150 individuals is probably the appearance of fiction. Look at that, fiction. Large number of strangers can cooperate successfully by believing in common myths. Now, I say myths, they could be true, but we're talking about stories. And if you start believing in stories, so I mean, we may not know the very specifics about George Washington, but we can all, remember. We can all say, "Oh yeah, he's the one who blah 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 blah," because we remember the stories. Any large-scale human cooperation, whether a modern state, a medieval church, an ancient city, archaic tribe, it's based on our collective storytelling. For example, you've got two lawyers, right? And they may have never ever seen one another ever before, but they know what the rules are. They know the rules of the story. The rules of the story is you dress up nice and you go in there, and the prosecution goes first, and they say blah, 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 and the defense goes next, and they try to get the defendant to be innocent. The other guys try to say that they're guilty, and there's certain rules that you play by. It's a story that we all agree to. We all agree to that. And even if they're on the same side, if I'm the defense attorney and my client says, "No, I want this other person to be on the team too," I may not know that person, but we can sit next to each other at the table and we know the story of how to get this person found innocent or guilty, as the case may be. We laugh when we say, many moons ago, we had a teacher here, I guess he'd be part of my Dunbar group. Back in the 80s, Mr. Novak, and he would always, we would say, "Mr. Novak, why did the French," because he taught French, "why did the French people say this word for this? That doesn't make any sense." And he would say, "A long time ago, they sat around the campfire and they were doing nothing, and then all of a sudden they said, 'You know what, I think we should name this.' And there's the reason, because they were sitting around the campfire." Well, I'm not saying that's wrong. Of course, he's just saying it just because he didn't know the answer. But we laugh about people who, the stories, many moons ago they sat around the campfire and they were talking about, whatever they're talking about. But ultimately, you know what we do? We sit around the campfire. Now, maybe a metaphorical campfire. I don't know, you might be sitting around a real campfire. After all, you now know different ways to start a campfire. But we do it too. We sit around campfires and we tell stories. You guys tell stories by clicking on your little doodad phone looking thing, and well, but it's the same idea. Bill Gates, you may have heard of him. He's doing okay with his bank account. Bill Gates and Microsoft. He's going to design a corporation called Microsoft, and Microsoft, the entity, which is making billions of dollars. Is he up to $1 trillion? I don't know, maybe. But billions of dollars. The idea behind a corporation, the law says a corporation is just like a person. But a corporation is it a building? Is it a group of people? Is it the idea? Again, Homo sapiens, we have the ability to think about that. So it's kind of cool how that works. But we tell stories. Microsoft is a story. The whole idea behind Microsoft. It's a story. If I'm trying to explain to a chimpanzee how PowerPoint works, I don't know, there are a couple of teachers in this building, I'm trying to explain PowerPoint and it feels like I'm talking to a chimpanzee. Moving on, the point is that Homo sapiens, we can grasp these big ideas. Here we have a picture of the body, blood of Christ. That's just the body of Christ. The cracker and the wine, right? Those of you who do this on Sunday, do you know how many people take the body and blood of Christ every Sunday? I mean, we're talking like not thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, not millions, not tens of millions, not hundreds of millions, but we're talking about several billion people every Sunday. several billion people do this every Sunday. It's a story that they all believe in. It's a story they all believe in. True or not, it's a story that they recognize the story, and they believe in it, and it works for them. There's Zeus up on his throne. Let's see, that would be Nike Athena, right? Those of you who do your mythology. How do you convince millions or billions of people to believe particular stories about gods or nations or limited liability companies? How do you do that? How do you get them to believe in stories? How do you get them to believe in the dollar bill? How do you get them to believe in math? That's a good question. Try to imagine how difficult it would have been to create states or churches or legal systems if we could speak only about things that are physically exist, such as rivers, trees, and lions. Yeah, the French, they had a belief in 1789. In 1788, they had a belief that said the king, the true divine right of kings, King Louis XVI, God was talking to King Louis XVI. Whatever came out of King Louis XVI's mouth was from God. The Chinese mandate of heaven, right? Except it was the French. And then in 1789, they had a little revolution. And it turns out that a lot of people suddenly realized that maybe the king wasn't receiving messages from God, and therefore maybe he should be at least this much shorter. So they took his head off with the guillotine. What's crazy about Homo sapiens is that we can change the stories at a moment's notice. We can change the stories. We can all believe in one story, and then if something happens, we can all choose to go with something different. We are alone in the universe. If a UFO were to land on the White House lawn this afternoon, we would all change our story. Well, some of us would be like, nah, that's just probably a Hollywood movie production. But animal behavior is also influenced by environmental factors and individual quirks. Nevertheless, in a given environment, animals of the same species will tend to behave in a similar way. The theory with animals is that changes in social behavior cannot occur unless there's a genetic mutation. Meerkats are going to do meerkat things, wolves are going to do wolf things, and apes are going to do ape things. Humans are animals too. Let's go back to chimpanzees. So, chimpanzees tend to be male-dominated when it comes to tribal affiliations. So the head of the tribe is usually the biggest, meanest chimpanzee. Ooh, Thomas Hobbes, look at that. The biggest, meanest chimpanzee. And he's going to form his tribe, his band of chimpanzees. But a closely related cousin to chimpanzees, which are the bonobos, they have a female hierarchy. So the biggest, baddest female is in charge of the tribe. Bonobos and chimpanzees, by the way, they don't get along. But if they did, we couldn't even, this would not happen, but can you imagine a group of chimpanzees going over to a bonobo tribe, some female chimpanzees going over to the bonobo tribe and going, hey, look, the women here are in charge. Let's go back over to the chimpanzee tribe and let's put our foot down. Now, that doesn't happen. The chimpanzees can be exposed to something new, but they can't convert it. They can't convert it into their life. They can't convert it. Male chimps cannot gather in a constitutional assembly to abolish the office of alpha male. Hey guys, let's vote him out of office. Well, they kind of do because they kill him, but they can't abolish the office of alpha male and say, oh, we now have a democracy, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, everybody's equal. No, it's not going to happen. Humans, we're animals too. And the thought process is that we were just like the other animals for millions of years. You look at the Homo erectus, and their stone tool, their sharp rock, was the same sharp rock that they used for 2 million years. Well, they're dead now. All the Homo erectus, the erectuses, the erecti, those guys, they're all dead. Why are the Homo sapiens here? Did we have a change in our DNA that gave us the ability to gossip? Did we have a change in our DNA for us to invent new ideas in our language? Love, truth, justice, not just lion, tree, water. Look, it's Maslow's triangle. And that's what I just said. Homo sapiens have the ability to use Gestalt. Gestalt is, we're going to use the short version. Feel free to look that bad boy up in the dictionary. Gestalt, the ability to see the big picture. So here, right there, you see 6 shapes. They're pentagon shapes, right? 6 pentagons. However, the vast majority of you looking at that as you're squinting at the small screen, you're looking at that and you're saying, no, that's not 6 shapes. That is clearly a soccer ball, right? You're looking at it, you see that's a soccer ball. Some of you might even, if you look really hard, you can see that line right there. You see that line, that line that curves? Please note that there actually is no line. That line doesn't actually exist. It only exists in your head. There's no line right there. If we were to show a chimpanzee that series of dots, they would see a series of dots. Human beings, Homo sapiens, we can see the dots, we can focus in on the individual dots, but we can also see the bigger picture. We can see the Dalmatian. You show the picture on the far left to an animal, and they may recognize that tree, a Joshua tree or a ginkgo tree. You show that to a Homo sapien, and they can see the tree if I tell them to focus in on the black part of the image. But if I tell a Homo sapien to focus in on the white part of the image, then suddenly they see the fish jumping out of the water and the ape and the mountain lion. Some of you are like, oh yeah, you guys see them now, look at that. That's kind of cool. Gestalt. Homo sapiens, we can see the big picture. Why is that? How did we get that how did that happen? Think about a person, let's say a lady who was born in 1900. A lady born in 1900, and she's living in Berlin in 1900. And let's say she lives to be 100 years old. Well, at the beginning of her life, she lived under Kaiser Wilhelm II. Then, when she was a young adult, she lived in the Weimar Republic. Totally different type of government. Then, in her 30s, or late 30s, she lived in the Third Reich, Nazi Germany. Then, after Nazi Germany, we're going to have, let's see, we're going to have East Berlin, right? Because we have the communists, the Iron Curtain. And then in 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell, then she's going to be living in the Federal Republic of Germany, or today we say Germany. So in her life, she's going to live in 5 radically different social systems. She's still a Homo sapien. She can make that adjustment. She has the ability to understand the story has changed, and I'm going to stay. My character is going to change with the story, or not. He died. This was key to the sapien success. In a one-on-one brawl, a Neanderthal would probably beat up a human. They're bigger, tougher, stronger, faster probably than Homo sapien. But if it's a group of Neanderthals versus a group of sapiens, sapiens probably have the advantage because we have the ability to communicate with one another. We have the ability to make long-term plans. We have the ability to make, if X happens, then we do Y. But if X doesn't happen, then we do Z. And Neanderthals possibly could not have done that. which gives us a huge advantage. Without the ability to compose fiction, Neanderthals were unable to cooperate effectively in large numbers. They couldn't tell news stories. How fast did stories spread? Here's an example. Sapien bands that lived on the island of New Ireland, which is just north of New Guinea, so we're talking about Indonesia, used a volcanic glass called obsidian. Oh, obsidian right there, right? Obsidian. You guys know about obsidian if you took earth science or whatever. You know obsidian. Very, 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 very sharp if you cleave it just right. New Ireland, however, that particular island doesn't have obsidian. In fact, the closest island that has obsidian is called New Britain, which is 250 miles away. How are these people getting obsidian, and how do they know what to do with it once they get it? Well, their stories are changing, and Homo sapiens have the ability to change the stories, to change the myths in their head, to go with the flow, and that's why we're still here. The immense diversity of imagined realities that sapiens invented and the resulting diversity of the behavior patterns are what we call culture. Ah, that looks pretty good. Wow. And then when culture changes over time and people write it all down, we call that history. Chimpanzee, Homo sapien. We have about 98% the same DNA. It's pretty crazy. Neanderthal and Homo sapien DNA, we have a lot of the same DNA. What made us different? Our societies are built from the same building blocks as Neanderthal or chimpanzee. However, the more we learn about their societies, Jane Goodall out there in the jungles of Tanzania with the chimpanzees, the more we learn about them, the more we learn about the Neanderthals, the Denisovians, the more we learn about the Homo florensis and all of the Homo erectus, the more we realize we really are special, the Homo sapiens. We are really different. We are different. Good or bad, we're different. Physiologically, we really have not changed. I mean, really, in the past, 500,000 years, we haven't changed. In the past 30,000 years, we haven't even really changed our ability to make tools. I mean, we haven't gotten faster. We haven't gotten smarter. I mean, we know more stuff, but have we gotten smarter? That's an argument, isn't it? Our teeth haven't gotten sharper. Our claws haven't gotten sharper. We haven't gotten we couldn't necessarily lift more than somebody could 30,000 years ago. Well, I mean, But, I don't know, Albert Einstein, his fingers, probably not as dexterous as somebody who lived 30,000 years ago who had to use their fingers all the time. I mean, he had to punch buttons on his post machine, but there you go. But, how are we different? We cooperate with large numbers of people. We cooperate with large numbers of people. And other animals and other Homo groups, not so much. Which means we win. Hey, speaking of cooperating with a large number of people, look at this picture. See if you can find me. I'm not actually in this picture, but I've been here. This is in Shibuya, Tokyo. It's a neighborhood in Tokyo. This is a street crossing, obviously. So when the light turns green, or when actually it says crosswalk go, these people cross the street. It is the busiest crosswalk in the world. Look at that. It averages 2,500 people crossing the street every time the light changes. Homo sapiens, we can deal with this. We understand the rules. Whether we follow the rules or not, we understand the rules. We understand when the light changes, you walk. And if you're walking towards each other and then you go around them. You step to the right or whatever you try. We understand the rules. Look how many people are crossing the light in one light exchange. We have this ability. Now this is Japan. In our neck of the world, in our neck of the woods, somebody probably shot. But the point is, we know what the rules are. So if we go back 30,000 years ago, this is the last slide for the day. If we go back 30,000 years ago, our IQ's probably the same. Our abilities probably the same. Do we have better? Do we have bigger vocabulary? Sure. Can we see different colors now that we know different names of colors? Well, no, that's the argument, right? Do we, now that we have more names for emotions than they had with regard to vocabulary, do we have different emotions? I don't know. That's the argument, isn't it? This is the cat 20,000 years ago. Here's David, Michelangelo's David, 500 years ago. Yeah, we're getting better. Stories! Woohoo! All right, that's plenty of stories for you to think about. Come up with something you learned, and we'll move on. I'll see you on Zoom. Be good.